everywhere, forgotten histories and untold legends awaken. I never expected to find that well, hidden deep in the woods behind my house. But when I touched its sacred water, I saw more than my own reflection. I saw another world. A world shaped by light and shadow, by heroes and tyrants, by choices that still echo through time. Join me as I uncover the stories of Aldarion that lie beyond the well. Seraphina, Flame of the Westwood. Episode 2. A Connection with Old Allies. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale golden light over the sloping hills and dense trees of the Westwood as Seraphina and Nalen made their way towards Raventhorn. The cobbled path beneath their feet was a nice change to the dirt trails they had mostly traveled on. It was a worn and steady reminder of the many people who had traveled here, each facing their own problems and difficulties. The town loomed in the distance, its stone walls and tall towers rising from the riverbank, casting long shadows over the plains that stretched out before them. "We're almost there," Nalen said, glancing over at Seraphina. He kept his voice steady, but there was an underlying tension to his words. His eyes constantly flickered to the town as if expecting trouble to spring from the very cobblestones. Seraphina nodded, her face hidden beneath the hood of her cloak. "I know you scouted the area yesterday, and I trust you." Nalen offered a quick glance and a half-smile, but his face was still tight with caution. "There is no sign of betrayal, at least not in the way I'd expect. The streets are busy, the usual bustle, but nothing out of the ordinary. I checked the inn ahead of time, too. No sign of trouble there, either. I'll sit apart from you two tonight in case anything happens, just to keep a watch, you know." Seraphina felt a subtle relief at his words, but the knot in her stomach remained. It was a mix of excitement and worry, fear and curiosity. This was the town of her birth, the place where she had once had a family, a name, before it was all torn away by Rolan's manipulations. But it was also where she had left her hope behind many years ago. Returning felt like walking into a past she had long since buried. She couldn't help but wonder if the people here would even remember her, or worse, if they would not see her as a daughter, trying to reclaim a birthright, but just being a symbol of rebellion. Nalen's voice broke into her thoughts again. "We'll take it slow once we reach the market district. We'll check in the inn. If Lyanna is there, then we'll keep going in as planned. Let's keep a low cover, though. No reason to stir things up till we know how these things stand." Seraphina gave him a small and grateful nod as they continued towards the city's tall walls. The gates of Raventhorn loomed ahead, sturdy and worn with time. The city guard was now easily within sight. No stopping now. Nalen's words echoed in her mind, reminding her that it was time to confront the past and claim her future. She wasn't sure yet how that would unfold, but at least she knew what she had to do. She hoped that would start with Lyanna, one of her dearest friends, who had remained in the city even when things had begun to change. By the time they entered the inn, the evening had already started to settle in. The bustling streets outside faded to a soft murmur, and the sounds of the market slowly gave way to the low hum of conversation within the tavern. Nalen's usual calm was more pronounced as he moved through the room, scanning for any signs of danger. The patrons, a mix of merchants and travelers, seemed to regard Nalen with mild curiosity, but nothing more. His role as a wandering bard allowed him to blend in seamlessly. But Seraphina's presence in the town was a different matter. She had left Raventhorn years ago, not in haste, but under circumstances that were anything but normal. Despite the years, part of her remained a figure of mystery here. If anyone recognized her, if anyone knew who she truly was, she would be in far more danger than they realized. Nalen gestured towards the corner where Lyanna sat, her back to the wall, her hands folded, carefully on the table before her. At first glance, she appeared almost like the same Lyanna Seraphina remembered. The same familiar presence, the same striking features softened by time. But there was a change in her posture, a wariness in her eyes that spoke of the years she had lived under the shadow of Rolan's rule. Seraphina took a steady breath, smoothing her cloak around her before she approached. As soon as Lyanna saw her, her face broke into a wide grin, and before Seraphina could even speak, Lyanna was on her feet and crossing the distance between them. "Seraphina," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I can hardly believe it's you." Tears shimmered in Lyanna's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "I've missed you. I never thought I'd see you again." Her arms encircled Seraphina in a tight embrace, and for a moment Seraphina allowed herself to feel the warmth of it, the feeling of someone who remembered her for who she truly was, not the shadow of a girl who had run away, but a girl who had once lived in this very town, full of hope. Nalen felt his heart lighten at the reunion, but also felt a stab of tension as he heard Lyanna call Seraphina by name. "I missed you too," Seraphina said softly, her voice tight with a little emotion. The two women pulled apart, and Lyanna motioned for her to sit. "Well, you're here now. That's what really matters." Seraphina saw some hope in her eyes, and a hint of pain as she said, I only wish it were under better circumstances." Seraphina took a seat opposite of her. "I didn't know where else to turn," she admitted, her voice low but steady. "I needed to know if there was anyone left who will stand with me." Lyanna's face hardened, her lips pressed into a thin line. "There are some who still remember the old days, Seraphina, but most of them are scared. Rolan, your uncle, has made sure of that. He's done it in small steps, but he's built something powerful. People don't realize what's happening until it's too late." "What exactly has happened?" Seraphina asked, her voice quiet but firm. Lyanna sighed, glancing around the tavern before speaking. "It all started slowly after your father passed. You were there, of course, at the beginning, but at first it did seem like Rolan was doing the right thing, managing the state, but then he began taking more control, little by little. First he helped your mother manage the affairs of the estate, the grounds, the labor, the finances, then the security. He brought in his own men, the Regalia Guard. They started small, just little patrollings around the estate, but now they're everywhere. They're in town, at the market, even in people's homes sometimes. They've become more powerful than the city guards. They're his eyes, his influence, and even lately," she glanced around and lowered her voice, "anyone who speaks against him, they've been disappearing." Seraphina's stomach churned. She had feared this, but hearing it from Lyanna's lips made it all sound too real. "The Regalia Guard, who are they?" "They're more than just soldiers. They answer to only him. They're loyal to him, not to the people, not to the law. The town is paralyzed by the fear of them. Even the magistrate has aligned himself with Rolan. People have no choice but to obey him. Some have been bought by promises of safety and wealth. But we're not free, none of us, not anymore." Lyanna's voice trembled slightly as she continued. And your mother, she died a few months ago. That's when he began to push even harder. He's claiming full authority of the Veylanor estate, the largest estate in the region. Up until this point, there have been other land barons and upper-class nobility that have kept him in check, but if he truly takes full control of the Veylanor assets... Her voice dropped off. She looked up into the crystal-clear blue eyes of Seraphina. "If you don't act soon, Seraphina, there won't be anything left to reclaim. He will take all of it." Seraphina felt a lump form in her throat. The weight she had felt before was massive, but the hope this woman had in her eyes, as if Seraphina could stop what Rolan had put in motion, felt crushing. Her thoughts then shifted to her mother. She had indeed suspected her death, but hearing the confirmation still felt like a punch to the gut. "I never wanted this for Mother. She did everything she could to protect me," Seraphina whispered. Lyanna reached across the table and placed a warm hand on Seraphina's. "Your mother, she was a beacon of hope to this town, Seraphina. She was the last true connection to the old ways, to the land, and to what was right. Her death, it has changed everything." Now, you're back. She looked hopeful. You're here to confront Rolan's rule. Seraphina stared at her friend, her thoughts a storm of fear and anger. She had come here with hope, hoping there was a way forward, some way to reclaim her birthright, but the reality was sinking in, and it felt like walls were closing in around her. Lyanna glanced left and then right. I've overheard my uncle talking. He's a local lawyer, works with the magistrates sometimes. I've heard him many times denounce Rolan. If there's someone you want to trust, if there's anyone you could trust, I would try him. Seraphina's brow furrowed. Well, then we go to your uncle. We do need help. Please know that if my uncle finds out I'm here, well, I will likely not live through the night. But I will not stop until I have exhausted every means and every path. We'll start with your uncle. Lyanna hesitated. It is dangerous, but I believe you can trust him. Seraphina took a deep breath. Well, we'll do it. I will take the risk. Nalen, who had been listening quietly, spoke. Well then, we'll move swiftly, but cautiously, no mistakes. Tomorrow. Lyanna nodded in agreement, her face determined. I will help you, Seraphina, but we'll have to move carefully. Rolan's web is tight. Any wrong move could be devastating. The conversation continued as they made plans to visit Lyanna's uncle the next day, knowing full well that every step would bring them closer to their goal, but also closer to the dangers that awaited them. The morning light had barely touched the city of Raventhorn, casting long shadows between tall buildings, when Nalen and Seraphina set off towards the law office. The streets were already busy, the merchants setting up their stalls and the locals bustling about their daily routines. But Nalen kept his pace steady and focused, casting occasional glances around them as he led the way. Seraphina walked beside him, her cloak drawn tight around her, but it couldn't shield her from the weight of everything that pressed on her heart. Every step she took felt like a step further into enemy territory, into a past she couldn't erase, but she knew she had to press forward, for herself, for her family, and for the future she could still claim. The office is just ahead, lass, Nalen said, glancing over her shoulder at Seraphina. We'll speak with this uncle, get what we can from him, then make our move. Seraphina nodded, her thoughts swirling. She wasn't exactly sure what she could expect from this man, but she had to believe that it was the best way forward that she could see. As they rounded the corner, the distinct smell of fish and stale bread filled the air. The market district was in full swing now, and the noise of haggling and chatter grew louder with each step. But just as they neared the alleyway where the law office was located, a harsh voice called out from behind them. You there! Halt! Seraphina's heart skipped a beat, and Nalen's hand instinctively moved to his loot case. Two burly figures clad in the dark blue and silver of the Regalia Guard stepped forward, blocking their path. Their eyes were sharp and calculating, scanning them up and down. The guards looked rough, their faces set in hard lines. Their armor was worn and dirty, and their heavy boots clunked as they stepped forward. One of them, a tall bearded man, sneered at Nalen. What's your business here in Raventhorn, traveler? Can't say I've seen you before. Nalen didn't flinch, his voice smooth and steady. Ah, my friend, I am but a simple storyteller, a singer, good sirs, he said, offering them a polite nod. Just passing through with my lovely daughter. We've come to visit an old friend, a family connection. He threw a pointed glance at Seraphina, offering a casual and fatherly smile. The guards exchanged a glance, their expressions softening for a moment as they took in Seraphina. The bearded man's eyes lingered more than necessary, and a sly grin crept across his face. Family connection, eh? The second man grunted, his voice dripping with condescension. Pretty daughter you've got there. Too bad she's hiding under that hood, eh? He chuckled, nudging his companion. Nalen's jaw tightened, but he kept his calm demeanor. Aye, well, you know how it is. She doesn't like to draw attention, but traveling a long way, and she's not as comfortable in crowds as I am. The first guard took a step forward, and his gaze shifted from Seraphina to Nalen. You seem harmless enough, but we still need to check you out. City's not as friendly as it used to be. Nalen nodded, his posture slightly stiff as he noticed the two men's movements become more scrutinizing. Of course, I understand. Do what you must. We're just passing through. No harm done. The guards exchanged another glance, and Nalen could feel the tension in the air. He was preparing to say something when the first guard took another step towards Seraphina. Don't worry, love, his voice dripping with false sweetness. We'll make sure you're well taken care of. After all, a beauty like you shouldn't be walking around this city without some proper attention. Seraphina stiffened, her breath catching in her chest. The tone of the guard was enough to make her stomach churn, but she held her ground. Seraphina pushed her hood back and her eyes bore into the man. She didn't say a word, but the message was clear. Both guards started as they saw she was indeed beautiful and filled with fire and passion. The first guard smiled and reached out to touch her golden hair. Nalen's hand shifted to his dagger, but before anything else escalated, a second guard interrupted with a grunt. Enough, Corin. We've got our orders. Let him through. Corin scowled but stepped back, allowing Nalen and Seraphina to pass. The two guards muttered something under their breath as they let him go, but there was no further issue. Once they were safely out of earshot, Nalen exhaled a quiet breath of relief. Oh my, that was too close, he muttered, glancing at Seraphina, whose face had paled slightly. We'll have to be careful and watch out for them from here on out. Seraphina nodded, though she remained silent for a moment, processing the encounter. It's hard to forget how oppressive things have become here. They're everywhere. Aye, lassie, they'll be watching us, no doubt, but we're not the only ones they're watching. They continued in silence towards the law office. The building was tucked into a quieter part of the district. As they approached the door, Nalen knocked twice, a signal they had been given by Lyanna the day before. A moment later, the door creaked open, and a man with graying hair and a weary expression peered out. You must be the ones, the man said gruffly. His eyes flicked to Seraphina and lingered for a moment before he stepped aside and let them in. Lyanna told me to expect you. He opened the door a little further. I'm Niles Hartright. Do come in and let us chat. Nalen nodded, then motioned for Seraphina to step inside. She did so with a measured pace, the weight of her mission clearly evident on her face. The tall man led them down a dimly lit hall into an office with shelves of dusty books and piles of paperwork. He motioned for them to sit and then crossed to a small desk where he began to shuffle through a few papers. He didn't offer them a greeting or a smile, just sat there and looked at them, trying to measure them up. Seraphina hesitated. She took a seat next to Nalen and let the man look at them. His eyes lingered on her, scrutinizing, as if he was trying to determine something. Seraphina, where have you been? He asked, his voice low and cautious. I haven't heard word from you in years, and now here you are, showing up out of the blue. I understand your concern, Seraphina said, her voice calm, but tinged with a trace of sadness. She started slowly, but went back to when her father died and told the story, the abuse, how her mother had to smuggle her out, the years at Matya's, and a brief bit on how Nalen came to know her. It is time for me to return and take back what is mine. I want to do what is right for the people of Raventhorn. I want to continue the legacy of my parents. Niles's face softened at the mention of her mother and father, but his caution didn't fade. You know the situation here, Seraphina. Things aren't what they used to be. Rolan's influence is everywhere. People talk about him as if he's the savior of Raventhorn, but I know better. I've seen things how they've gone. The man has his hooks into every part of this city. Seraphina glanced down at the ring on her finger, the one her father had given her, a symbol of their family's legacy. Slowly she worked the ring off and placed it on the desk in front of Niles. Sir, you are wise to be cautious, But make no mistake, I am Seraphina, rightful heir to my parents' estate." Niles glanced down at the ring on the desk, then picked it up and examined it. He nodded slowly before carefully setting it back down. He looked out his window for a moment, and then nodded again to himself. "Well, right then. That's enough for me. I do believe you, and I will be willing to help, though you may find my services are somewhat limited lately. You see, up until a very few weeks ago, I had been one of the few who had openly pushed back on the actions of Rolan, as far as legally assuming, I would say. My partner and I, Aldarion rest his noble soul, we pushed." Then his voice trailed off. "But, you see, he began to worry. My partner, Bree, he kept saying he was seeing things at night that worried him. I didn't believe him at first, but he became more panicked. Then one day, he didn't show at the office here. I looked, called upon his lady, as well as his servants, but nothing. Gone. I haven't seen him since. And now, well, I am quite disturbed to tell you that I too have been seeing things of late, at nighttime especially. A wraith, a man of sorts, if you believe in that sort of thing. I don't know, but there is something following me." His voice went quiet, and he looked over his shoulder and then peered out the window quickly. I don't believe I'll be around much longer." Nalen and Seraphina looked at each other. "Please understand, we, old Bree and myself, we used to call upon your father. I had a fairly good idea of the documents, of his last will and testament that existed. Seraphina, I know for a fact that you were specifically listed on those papers as heir. And, well, I am somewhat saddened to say that your father did trust Rolan. He was his brother after all, and it wouldn't be a far stretch to say that Rolan may have been on there as well, except for this one fact." Niles sat a little straighter at the desk. His chin dropped and his voice deepened. "Why hasn't he produced them? If Rolan really was listed on the will, it would have been the first thing he'd have claimed. But now it's been several months and no word. It seems fairly obvious to me that he is in the process of replicating them." Nalen shifted in his chair. "He's had ample time to do so. Why hasn't he done this already?" Niles turned to look at him. "My good man, replicating such documents is not a simple thing. There are ways in which the verifiability is accomplished, and I seriously doubt that Madame Veylanor would have allowed access to those papers before her death. So, we need to break in and find them, likely locked away, and steal them back," Seraphina asked. Yes, something like that," said Niles. "What you need are the originals. They'll have the marks that will match the marks set in the city vaults. Once Rolan successfully matches those marks, he'll be able to create a convincing forgery, and there will be no way to disprove him no matter what the originals say. Yes, we must retrieve the originals." He looked down. "And I'm afraid I will not live to see that happen." Well, that's it for today. Thank you for coming with me beyond the well. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking, following, or subscribing. And if you have a moment, I would love a review. Your feedback truly makes a difference. If you want to dive deeper into the well, visit beyondthewell.net for show notes, transcripts, maps, character descriptions, and much, much more. And until next time, keep seeking, keep dreaming, and keep telling your story.